Night was falling over Europe, and with it came a kind of silence that doesn't belong to peace, but to exhaustion. The war had already chewed through cities, fields, and entire generations, leaving the air heavy with the smell of smoke and the memory of too much loss. But somewhere beyond the sound of distant artillery, in the half-light between reality and illusion, a strange army was gathering, an army unlike any other. An army that would fight with shadows, sound, trickery, and imagination. The kind of story that feels like a rumor whispered around a fire, except every detail of it is true. This is the story of the Ghost Army, a secret American unit of artists, actors, sound engineers, illustrators, and designers who were sent into World War II not to fire bullets, but to create them, not to destroy tanks, but to inflate them, not to outnumber the enemy, but to fool them into believing they were outnumbered. It was a war fought with illusions, and it worked. But to understand how a group of young artists ended up on the front lines armed with paint, rubber, and microphones, we need to go back to the moment the idea was born. Because as strange as this story is, it begins with something incredibly human. Fear. Fear that the Allies didn't have the manpower to push through Europe fast enough. Fear that one wrong step could give Hitler the advantage again. Fear that thousands of soldiers would die unless something radically different happened. So military strategists turned to a weapon that had existed for thousands of years but had never been perfected until then. Deception. They called their unit the 23rd Headquarters Special Troops, but the name was intentionally bland, a disguise for a disguise. Only a few generals even knew what the group would really do. The men inside it had backgrounds that made no sense for war. Some were painters from Yale, others were set designers from Hollywood, radio actors, fashion illustrators, sound engineers. A handful of them were barely old enough to have finished art school, yet they were about to stage some of the most dangerous illusions in military history. And the first thing they learned was simple. If you want to fool the enemy, you can't halfway commit. You have to create a world they can see, hear, and feel. A world realistic enough to look expensive, large, powerful, even if it was made of rubber and hope. Their weapons were divided into three main categories: visual deception, sonic deception, and radio deception. But these terms, technical as they sound, don't capture how absurd, brilliant, and dangerous the work really was. For visual deception, the Ghost Army created entire armored divisions out of inflatable tanks. Giant balloon-like Shermans painted with real shadows and fake mud patterns to look heavy, metallic, intimidating. A team of 4 men could carry one. A team of 2 could inflate one in minutes. From a distance, and especially from the air, they were perfect. Fake artillery, fake trucks, fake aircraft. They even painted fake tire marks on roads so that reconnaissance planes would see what they expected to see. Movement, weight, the hint of thousands of soldiers. The Ghost Army learned quickly that war is a psychological puzzle. You don't have to build a perfect lie. You just have to build one that fits the enemy's fears. Then came the sonic deception, the part of their mission that still feels like something from a science fiction movie. The US Army had recorded the sounds of real tank battalions, construction crews, truck convoys, and armored divisions moving through different terrains: gravel, mud, grass, forest. The recordings were mixed like film soundtracks with layers of clanking metal, engines revving, men shouting, tools dragging across the ground. These soundtracks were mounted on huge speakers strapped to half trucks. The speakers could throw sound across 15 kilometers, enough to make a ghost army seem alive. Imagine yourself as a German soldier late at night, the fog crawling low through the trees. Suddenly you hear the unmistakable rumble of dozens of tanks approaching. You can count them by sound: 5, 10, 30, maybe more. You hear the grinding of gears, the tracks slicing through the mud, the heavy metallic breathing of engines. But when you send scouts, there's nothing. Your mind fills the gaps, and fear does the rest. The third weapon in the Ghost Army's arsenal was radio deception. Radio operators learned to mimic entire battalions, not just content, not just fake messages. They mimicked personalities, the quirks of individual radio operators, the speed at which each one typed, their favorite abbreviations, their sloppiness or precision, their tone, their rhythm. German intelligence intercepted the transmissions and believed every word. Why wouldn't they? The radio identities matched perfectly those of the real divisions the Ghost Army was impersonating. Taken together, these elements created an illusion so complete that the Ghost Army could make 1,100 men appear as 30,000. They could move divisions that didn't exist. They could create threats made from canvas and air. And the Germans reacted every time, diverting reinforcements, misreading strategies, retreating from phantoms, even launching attacks on empty fields. The Ghost Army's first major operation happened near Brest, in France. Real American forces needed an opening, a chance to strike without counterattack. So the Ghost Army set the stage. They inflated tanks, placed fake artillery, set up dummy camps with laundry hanging on clotheslines. They blasted hours of construction noise. They even staged fake checkpoints so civilians would spread rumors of troop buildup. The Germans believed every bit of it, and their hesitation bought the Allies time. Panic surged through the ranks. Real divisions were stretched thin, exhausted, desperate, and into that chaos, the Ghost Army was thrown. They had to imitate forces that didn't exist, pretending to reinforce positions they were completely unequipped to defend. At one point, the enemy was so close that Ghost Army soldiers could hear German conversations through the trees. They worked through the night, inflating tanks, playing engine noises, and broadcasting fake radio chatter, knowing full well that if even a small group of German scouts approached, they'd uncover the entire illusion. But the enemy never came close enough, not because the Ghost Army hid well, but because their illusions convinced the Germans the position was heavily defended. Once again, a lie saved thousands of lives. The Ghost Army's most famous operation, their masterpiece, happened near the Rhine River. This was the final push, the moment that would decide the fate of Germany. Real divisions needed to cross the river. But if the Germans anticipated the crossing point, the casualties would be catastrophic. The Ghost Army was ordered to imitate 2 full divisions moving north, drawing German reinforcements away from the real crossing site. It was the biggest deception they ever attempted. Hundreds of inflatable tanks were deployed, dozens of fake camps, endless radio messages, and the sound teams blasted engine noises day and night. German intelligence believed the show. They shifted their troops north, leaving the real crossing point lightly defended. The Allies crossed successfully, and the war moved one giant step closer to its end. Later, military analysts calculated that the Ghost Army's work saved between 15,000 and 30,000 lives, yet their story nearly vanished. After the war, the entire project was classified. Families had no idea what their sons had done. Friends assumed they were just regular soldiers. The US government sealed every document, every photograph, every sketch, every after-action report for half a century. War stories usually celebrate force, strength, and destruction. But this story, the story of the Ghost Army, celebrates something else entirely: the power of imagination in the face of horror. Creativity used as a shield, art used as a weapon, illusion used to protect life, not take it. When the files were finally declassified in the 1990s, the world discovered that some of the most celebrated artists of the 20th century, including fashion designers, illustrators, painters, and sound pioneers, had once fought in a secret war of shadows. Their diaries showed the tension of performing illusions under fire. Their drawings captured the bizarre beauty of inflatable tanks under the sun. Their letters home revealed the loneliness of carrying a secret they couldn't share. One of the last surviving members of the Ghost Army once said, "We were artists before the war, we were artists during it, and we stayed artists after it. The only difference is that, for a brief moment in history, our art saved lives." And maybe that's the heart of this story. In a world torn apart by violence, destruction, and fear, a group of young men proved that imagination could be strategic, deception could be humane, and creativity, even in the darkest places, could become a force for good. The Ghost Army didn't fight for medals or recognition. They fought to protect strangers they would never meet. They fought to confuse the enemy long enough for real soldiers to survive. They fought with rubber, microphones, paintbrushes, and courage. Most armies try to win wars by being stronger. The Ghost Army won theirs by being clever, and that is why their story, hidden for decades, still echoes today. A reminder that even in war, the most brutal invention of humanity, the human mind, remains capable of extraordinary invention. A reminder that truth can be weaponized, but so can imagination. A reminder that sometimes the most incredible battles are fought not with guns, but with illusions. This was the Ghost Army, a division that never existed, but changed the course of a war.